Hello, Galaxy. I'm Chris Pirillo, and I'd like to talk about talking to computers. Something that I have not been doing my entire life. The first time I think I remember seeing someone talk to a computer was Scotty in Star Trek IV, where he picks up the mouse and says, "Computer." That was a horrible Scotty accent. I was just trying to help you understand that I've been not talking to computers my entire life. So when I first saw Siri several years ago, I had a chance to interview the developers, the creators. And I did this at South by Southwest. That video should still be in this channel. You could watch it. I was impressed. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. But the thing about Siri back then, before it was acquired by Google, is that it wasn't integrated into iOS. So it wasn't really seamless. You didn't necessarily think about launching it when you needed to do something. It wasn't necessarily as convenient as it may have been to open up any other app that you may wanted to ask a question. And even then, were you comfortable enough speaking your query in the hopes of getting a response? And I can say that it was fun, but Siri back then was rather gimmicky. Cool, bleeding edge, but still kind of gimmicky. So when Apple acquired it, I kind of got excited. I'm like, now we're talking. We're talking about integration with this software and making these commands a lot more seamless and integrated into, at that point in time, a generally well-polished iOS experience. Siri has improved. Let me try that again. Improved over time, but it really hasn't. I stand by what I've said pretty much for the past few years. Siri is a sex panther. 60% of the time, it works all the time. And when a technology simply cannot be trusted, cannot be relied upon, cannot be found to have produced results on a continuous basis for you in an even keel, it's really not worth using. I know it's baked into iOS. It comes with the iPhone. You paid for it. You're paying for it, if you have it. I stopped using Siri, for the most part. The only time I would seemingly invoke a Siri command is if I was setting an alarm. That was it, because it seemed that any other time I would ask it something, it couldn't figure out what I was talking about, and it directed me to a web search anyway, which was kind of disconnected from the experience that I was hoping to get. Even if it was something as simple as asking it to play a song that I knew was in the library, that I've asked it the same way, same tone, same timbre of voice, it couldn't figure out what was going on. And it would happen not just with that, but also destinations or addresses or phone numbers that were in my address book. Siri sometimes got it and sometimes didn't. So it wasn't that it didn't work. It's that Siri just doesn't work all the time. That's a problem. It's a bigger problem because Apple is still touting Siri as whatever Apple's touting Siri as, and you can't replace it with any other digital assistant, any other AI. You can, however, use Google Assistant on your iPhone or iPad. That's something that you could do if you didn't know that you can do it. So if you want to run your own tests, and I would challenge you to do that, especially if you run into an issue with Siri, because anytime I've shared this information, never really being inclined to do like a shootout between the two, because it's generally relative. I've shared these little quips in the past saying, look, I asked this command of Siri and Google Assistant, and Siri was like, shrug emoji, I don't know what's going on here. Although it said it in its, voice. That was not I hope that is never a Siri voice. Or a Google Assistant voice, for that matter. The response I would often get is, well, I asked my Siri and it was fine. I'm like, that's my point. It's so unstable that the same command issued by someone else would yield a different result. So that's great. I'm glad it worked for you in that context. But, when I need to... this is where it just kind of gets funny. When I need to do something, when I'm going to ask my digital assistant, my AI tool baked into the device du jour, when I need to invoke something, I need to ask my device, not yours. I'm not going to come, hey, I need to ask it what a conversion for currency. I need to, add something to my calendar. Could I use your... It's not just impractical, it's asinine. So that speaks to my point. And this is something that you just can't see in specs. Google and Google's Assistant, I feel, for the most part, is doing a better job at handling what it is that I'm asking, for one. It also handles the response in terms of its voice in a far more, I hesitate to say elegant, cohesive, like more natural fashion. Like whatever voice Google has recently included or integrated within the Google Assistant sounds far more natural than Siri does right now. And that is never more apparent than when you might be listening to directions or something that is like a paragraph of text versus like a sentence. Like the intonation or the cadence of Siri's response is so off-putting, so unnatural. It's jarring. It's like, oh yeah, I'm using a computer. That's not a good experience. People don't want to be reminded that they're using a computer when they're actually using a computer. They want that experience to melt away into the background. That is the goal. That is the vision of AI. And Apple is still failing to meet, well, I'm just going to say 90% of what I might expect from a digital assistant, from this AI. Doesn't surprise me. That's not really Apple's background. I know they're working on their whole system of taking this data and mixing it up with that data and serving better results to you. But as we've seen with recent what would I call them, updates, the autocorrect issue where suddenly without warning you would have a wacky like a symbol that wasn't even registered on the keyboard, and then an A instead of a capital letter I. That allegedly was fixed, but even the people that I've talked to said it wasn't fixed. This intelligence that Apple is banking on effectively, I don't think is all that intelligent. And I'm not going to say that it's because they didn't, put it into their marketing speak the way that Google did, because you might remember Google says software is equal to AI is equal to hardware. Upon that, I can absolutely agree. Now, having used a Google Assistant and invoking it by way of various commands, whether by voice or by squeeze on my current device, I find that there are rare times where it doesn't do something that I was expecting it to do. Rare. And when I say rare, like it's a non-issue. And the reason why is because I'm used to the way that Siri does things. So if I'm talking to Siri and I'm driving, I can say, cancel this route. Siri cancels it. Usually. Sometimes I have to ask it a few times. Maybe it's my voice, which I admit is probably right up there in terms of like top 100 worst voices in the world. But when I've tried to invoke that command to Google Assistant, it doesn't know what's going on. I trigger it by way of voice. It apparently doesn't know it, or I don't know the right way to state the command, which is another hurdle for AI to overcome. I don't really want to quibble about that. So it's more like the issues I'm running into are specifically in retraining myself, in turning on certain things with Google Assistant versus Siri, because they have different sets of commands. But once I, get over that hump, if there is a hump to begin with, I'm generally far more satisfied with what Google Assistant does than the way Siri handles things. And if you don't believe me, do your own tests on iOS. You can't do it on Google or on Android, but you can do it on iOS. You can go back and forth between the two, and maybe based upon your general usage, you don't see or hear or experience any difference. But given that I have run into these walls to the point where I just don't ever want to use Siri again on any device, apparently my wife has run into the same problems. That kind of surprised me. She said, yeah, I stopped using it. In fact, I think she said that in a video we did, it was a few weeks ago, here in this channel, live. That video should still be public, unlike the live video we did yesterday, 3 hours with y'all, answering questions, interacting, taking super chats, and YouTube, after it went live, decided to munge it and squish 3 hours down into 3 minutes, and I don't know what happened. I submitted a support request this morning. They said, we've never seen this happen before. I'm like, yeah, kind of surprised me as well. I have no idea if yesterday's long live video will ever be made public. It's still unlisted. You can still watch it, but it's unwatchable. Anyway, That video with Diana saying that is online. A conversation I had with a friend, Slav, a few months ago before the recent Galaxar event that we produced. He has an iPhone SE, and he's very happy with it. He actually moved from Android, but he's ready to chuck it through the wall because of Siri. So I watch him try to invoke a command by Siri, and he just gives up and launches Google Assistant outright. And he's done that. He's done that at least twice that I've seen in person, telling me that Siri is garbage. I don't disagree. If given the choice between the two, I would absolutely prefer Google Assistant, even on an iOS device. My wish would be that Apple would open up and allow me to swap out Siri with something that actually works more of the time. I don't think Apple's going to do that. Google might do that. That is the power of Android, or the power of approaching the marketplace the way that Google's approaching it, but it's definitely counter to Apple's ethos as far as creating a cohesive user experience is concerned, which I wouldn't have a problem with if it actually worked. So I just don't think there's a comparison to be made. If you have an iPhone, you owe it to yourself to try Google Assistant on the same iPhone that you use Siri on, because that's a better way of executing AI and a digital assistant than I've ever seen from any other company, going all the way back to the very first time that I saw Siri in person. I know I'm not the only one who has a big problem with Siri. Huge. Can't get rid of it. I mean, so long as you're sticking with an iPhone. I mean, I still have my iPhone right there. This one, the iPhone 8 Plus, not the iPhone 10. Don't want to go into that right now. See, that's the thing. Even if it's new hardware, you still got to deal with the same software. That's what I've been critical about. Not the hardware, the software. Stay tuned for the upcoming TLDR episode. We do a TLDR broadcast just about every weekday at youtube.com/LockerGnome. And then after that, I'll record a podcast, and that's done at twitch.tv/Chris Pirillo. And you can head over there, become a sub, join Discord chat, just like you can if you're a patron of mine. But the cool thing we're going to try, I think, tonight, because last night everyone seemed to have fun with it, we're going to do like a TLDR After Dark, or a Chris Pirillo After Dark, or Chris Pirillo Uncensored. I don't know what we're going to title it yet. Maybe it will be Chris Pirillo Uncensored, CPU. I've played with that for years. We'll do a CPU live on Twitch tonight. That'll be a lot of fun. Chris Pirillo Uncensored. Trust me, you have no idea. Siri can't translate those commands. It gets mad at me. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for remembering to like this video if you did. Thank you for commenting, letting me know your experience. I do appreciate that as well. I appreciate all the support you give in whatever ways you see fit to give it. I love you. I appreciate you. And at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices. May the Force be with you.